Captain Morgan Riley had exactly 3 requirements for a successful first contact mission. Don't start a war, don't catch any weird space diseases, and don't let Lieutenant Dave Thompson speak to anyone important. As the freshly wounded finger on her left hand throbbed in pain, she realized with growing horror that at least one of those conditions had already been catastrophically violated. "What do you mean you've never seen cellular regeneration before?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level as 6 eye stalks swiveled in her direction, their pupils dilating to pinpoints of disgust. The lead Vax'arian diplomat, Ambassador Krill, made a sound like someone choking a vacuum cleaner. The translator implant in Riley's ear rendered it as, "Please cease that thing you are doing with your appendage immediately. There are juveniles present." Riley glanced down at her finger where a small drop of blood had formed after she'd accidentally sliced it on the ceremonial greeting blade, a cultural misunderstanding that, frankly, should have been in the mission briefing. But what seemed to disturb the aliens wasn't the blood itself, but what was happening beneath it. "I'm not doing anything," Riley replied, baffled. "It's just clotting. That's normal." Lieutenant Thompson, who she had specifically ordered to remain quiet during this exchange, chose this moment to pipe up. "Hey, they're like those weird frogs that don't heal, remember? The ones that just die if you scratch them?" Ambassador Krill's translator couldn't handle Thompson's unique blend of insubordination and idiocy and simply emitted a soft beep of confusion. "What my colleague is trying to say," Riley interjected with a glare that could melt through the hull of their ship, "is that our species may have different recovery processes." The 6 Vax'arians huddled together, all 24 eye stalks now focused on her finger, as if it were about to explode. One of them, a junior diplomat whose name translated approximately to gentle morning breeze caressing the 7th moon, leaned forward with scientific curiosity. "Your cells are replicating? Spontaneously? Without external medical intervention?" "Yes. How else would we heal?" The huddle of aliens collectively moved backward about 3 feet. "And those fleshy filaments beneath the surface, their deliberate constructions? You're consciously controlling this process?" Riley was completely lost now. "No, it just happens automatically. Our bodies just fix themselves." The ensuing silence was broken only by what sounded like one of the aliens quietly vomiting into a ceremonial receptacle. Ambassador Krill finally spoke, the translator struggling to convey the mixture of horror and fascination in his multitonal voice. "Captain Riley, in all the known galaxy, no sentient species grows new parts from within themselves. It is, forgive my bluntness, barbaric. Like watching mold consume a corpse, but while still living." And that's how humanity's grand entrance into the galactic community became immediately sidetracked by the revelation that, apparently, bleeding and healing was an evolutionary anomaly that made other species want to throw up their multiple stomachs. 3 days later, Captain Riley stood behind a one-way observation window, watching as Dr. Mira Patel, the ship's physician, allowed a Vax'arian medical team to examine her. Apparently, humans were now the galaxy's most fascinating biological curiosity. "So you're saying," Dr. Patel enunciated slowly, "that when you get injured, you don't grow replacement tissue?" The Vax'arian doctor, whose name badge helpfully translated to horrified observer of biological aberrations, but who preferred to be called Dr. Tix, waved all 4 of his upper limbs emphatically. "Of course not. What kind of primitive evolutionary path would that be? We seal the wound with secreted biofilm and then undergo controlled cellular deletion of the damaged area. Clean, efficient, civilized." "You just delete the damaged parts?" Patel asked. "Permanently?" "Obviously. What would possess a species to keep damaged genetic material and force it to replicate? Do you know how many copying errors occur during your so-called healing?" Dr. Tix's eye stalks quivered with professional indignation. In the observation room, Lieutenant Thompson leaned toward Riley. "So they just get smaller every time they get hurt?" Apparently, Riley sighed, which explains why they're all so careful, and why they consider our rapid cell division to be, quote, "disgustingly cancerous in nature." Through the window, they watched as Dr. Patel demonstrated the process of scab formation on a small abrasion on her arm, causing two Vax'arian assistants to flee the room in what the translator described as excretory panic. Dr. Tix, however, remained rigidly professional, though his color had shifted from a healthy blue-green to something approaching nauseated taupey. And these scabs, as you call them, fall off on their own? And you just leave them places? In public? He asked, mandibles clicking in distress. Well, we try not to, Dr. Patel replied apologetically. But sometimes they just, happen. In another lab down the corridor, Ensign Rodriguez was demonstrating to a horrified xenobiologist how human hair and nails continuously grow throughout life. You mean to tell me, the alien researcher gasped, that you must regularly sever parts of yourselves for your entire lives? I mean, it's just a haircut, Rodriguez explained, bewildered. It's not like it hurts. Pain is not the point. The researcher shrieked, spilling fluorescent blue liquid from a beaker. The psychological implications alone is to be constantly in a state of unwanted growth. How do you not go insane? Back in the main lab, Dr. Tix had recovered enough composure to ask the question that had apparently been bothering the entire Vax'arian scientific community. But why? Why would evolution select for such a messy, inefficient process? Dr. Patel shrugged. Honestly, because it works. We don't just heal, we adapt. Break a bone, it grows back stronger. Tear a muscle, it rebuilds with more fibers. We don't just survive injuries, we improve from them. For a moment, all of Dr. Tix's eye stalks went completely still, focused with laser intensity on Dr. Patel. Are you suggesting, he whispered, that you deliberately become stronger through damage? Well, not deliberately, but... The Vax'arian's translator couldn't keep up with whatever Dr. Tix said next, but the panicked series of clicks and whistles required no interpretation. Captain Riley watched as the alien scientist hurried from the room, already dictating urgent notes into a recording device. Well, Lieutenant Thompson said cheerfully, I think that went well. Riley massaged her temples. Thompson, your definition of well concerns me deeply. 1 week into what was supposed to be a straightforward diplomatic mission, Captain Riley found herself crouched in a ventilation shaft, peering through a grate into what appeared to be a secret laboratory deep within the Vax'arian space station. Beside her, Dr. Patel was busy trying to decode the alien text scrolling across a data pad they'd borrowed from Dr. Tix's quarters. I'm getting really tired of being right about things going wrong, Riley whispered. Below them, a group of aliens that definitely weren't Vax'arians moved around the lab. These creatures were taller, with exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian and limbs that seemed too numerous and angular to be comfortable. The Quantum Collective, Dr. Patel murmured, showing Riley the translation. Apparently they're a sort of intergalactic weapons development consortium. They're very interested in our, and I quote, disgusting but militarily significant regenerative capabilities. Great, Riley muttered. Just great. First contact and we're already being weaponized. Through the grate, they watched as one of the collective scientists held up a vial of what was unmistakably human blood. A larger figure stepped into view, its carapace adorned with what appeared to be military insignia. That's got to be High Commander Zelt, Patel whispered, pointing to a matching image on the datapad. He's described as the collective's leading expert in biological warfare adaptations. Zelt's voice was deep, with a metallic resonance that the translation implant rendered in clipped, efficient phrases. The human capacity for spite-driven regeneration changes everything, Zelt was saying to his assembled team. Their bodies don't just repair damage, they actively fight against it. They grow stronger from conflict. Imagine weapons that don't just destroy enemy forces, but actually become more effective the longer they're deployed. Riley felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. Did he just call our healing spite-driven regeneration? She whispered. Yeah. I think that's how their translation matrix interprets it, Patel replied softly. They can't comprehend biological processes that don't require conscious control or external intervention. So to them, our bodies automatically fighting against damage can only be explained as some kind of revenge against injury. Cellular grudges, Riley snorted. That's a new one. Below them, Zelt was continuing his briefing, unfolding a holographic display that showed human DNA sequences being spliced with something else, something that pulsed with an unnatural light. Phase 1 is already complete, he announced. The human test subjects have been processed for extraction. Phase 2 will begin once Ambassador Krill delivers the rest of the human delegation. Riley and Patel exchanged alarmed glances. Test subjects, Patel hissed. The 3 crew members who were quarantined for possible biological contamination. We're never actually sick, Riley finished grimly. We need to move. Now. As they backed away from the grate, Riley's communicator vibrated with an incoming message from Lieutenant Thompson. Captain Emergency Code Delta, the Vax'arians are taking us to special dinner, but I think we're the dinner help. Even in life-threatening situations, Thompson somehow managed to be both right and annoying simultaneously. For the record, Lieutenant Thompson whispered as they crawled through the maintenance tunnels of the Vax'arian station. I would like it noted that I warned everyone that the welcome buffet seemed suspicious. Your exact words were, I bet alien food tastes like purple, Riley hissed back. That's not a warning. That's just you being weird. Behind them, Dr. Nix, a Vax'arian scientist who had apparently developed a moral objection to harvesting humans for their spite cells, clicked nervously. Please accelerate your locomotion. The security drones will detect your heat signatures if we remain stationary. Dr. Nix had appeared outside their holding cell just as the Vax'arian guards were preparing to escort Riley's team to the Quantum Collective's laboratory. Armed with nothing but a security override card and what appeared to be crippling professional embarrassment, Nix had freed them with a hurried explanation that boiled down to, some of us think harvesting sentient beings for their regenerative properties is ethically problematic, regardless of how disgustingly you heal. Now they were on the run, trying to reach the docking bay where their ship was still attached to the station. The 3 crew members who'd been taken earlier, ensigns Kim, Rodriguez, and Chen, had been rescued from the lab during the confusion, though Kim was still groggy from whatever sedatives they'd administered. Hold up, Riley signaled, peering through a grate. Security checkpoint ahead. Dr. Nix's eye stalks quivered anxiously. This route was supposed to be clear. They must have implemented the new patrol schedule early. We need a distraction, Riley decided, looking around at her team. Her gaze settled on Thompson. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked suspiciously. 5 minutes later, Lieutenant Thompson was creating what could only be described as a masterpiece of diversionary tactics. It turned out that his unique ability to be simultaneously annoying and engaging was actually a tactical advantage when he wanted it to be. And that's why humans have to cut their toenails. They heard him explaining loudly to the increasingly distressed security team as the rest of them slipped past the checkpoint. Would you like to see? I haven't trimmed mine in like 3 weeks and... The sounds of commotion and retching followed, giving them valuable seconds to continue their escape. Your colleague has a remarkable talent for inducing disgust, Dr. Nix observed, leading them down another corridor. You have no idea, Riley muttered. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a group of aliens that definitely weren't Vax'arians, but also weren't members of the Quantum Collective. These were smaller, with multifaceted eyes and bodies that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescence. Dr. Nix immediately raised all 4 hands in a gesture of nonviolence. The Lurai Resistance. We seek your assistance. The what now? Patel whispered. Not everyone in the galaxy approves of the Quantum Collective's weapons research, Nix explained quickly. The Lurai have been sabotaging their operations for cycles. The lead Lurai, whose shimmering skin pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to form words, responded in a language that sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. They will help us reach your ship, Nix translated. But we must hurry. High Commander Zelt has deployed hunter drones. As if on cue, an alarm began to wail throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors, making the Lurai's skin flash even more brilliantly. What are hunter drones? Riley asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. Autonomous security units programmed to retrieve biological samples, Nix replied nervously. Usually non-lethally, but... A metallic screech echoed from somewhere behind them, followed by the sound of something large moving very quickly through the ventilation system. Run, Riley ordered. The combined human-alien group sprinted through the corridors, guided by the Lurai who seemed to know every shortcut and service passage. Thompson rejoined them at an intersection, panting heavily. He made new friends. He gasped. Also, pretty sure I started some kind of religious crisis when I showed them how scabs form. Stop showing aliens your bodily functions. Riley snapped, pulling him along as a crash indicated the hunter drones had broken through somewhere nearby. The first drone rounded the corner behind them, a nightmare of articulated limbs and sampling needles, moving with horrible spider-like agility. Dr. Patel, bringing up the rear, stumbled. Riley turned back, drawing the standard-issue pulse pistol she'd managed to keep hidden during their diplomatic visit. She fired 3 shots, hitting the drone squarely in its central processing unit. The drone paused, sparked dramatically, and then began to repair itself, mechanical tendrils knitting back together in a horrifying parody of human healing. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," Riley growled. "They already weaponized our regeneration?" "Prototype only," Nix clicked frantically. "Not fully stable." Riley holstered her useless weapon and grabbed a piece of broken piping from the floor. "Fine. Let's see how it handles old-fashioned blunt force trauma." The ensuing battle would later be described in Lurai ballads as the moment when the humans revealed they fight as disgustingly as they heal. The docking bay doors hissed open to reveal exactly the scenario Captain Riley had been dreading. High Commander Zelt, flanked by a contingent of Quantum Collective soldiers, standing between them and their ship. "Captain Riley," Zelt's metallic voice reverberated through the chamber. "Your escape was impressive but ultimately futile. Your species' remarkable spite healing will revolutionize warfare throughout the galaxy." Riley stepped forward, the makeshift pipe weapon still clutched in her hand. Behind her, the surviving members of her crew and their alien allies fanned out, looking worse for wear but remarkably determined. "Here's what I don't understand," Riley said, playing for time as she assessed their options. "Why are you so obsessed with our healing? Your technology is centuries beyond ours. You have ships that can fold space, weapons that disintegrate matter. What's so special about some cells that grow back?" Zelt's mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as condescending amusement. "Because, Captain, your healing isn't merely biological. It's philosophical. Your cells don't just repair, they rage against damage. They refuse to accept destruction. They spite the very concept of injury." The commander's exoskeleton shifted, plates realigning to reveal what appeared to be a weapon embedded in his torso. "The universe tends toward entropy, Captain. Everything falls apart. Except humans. Humans look at the fundamental law of the cosmos and say, 'No.'" "That's not spite," Dr. Patel called out. "That's just survival." "Is it?" Zelt countered. "Then explain why your kind heals better when you're angry? When you're determined? When you refuse to die out of sheer stubborn defiance?" Riley hadn't actually known that particular detail about human physiology, but she wasn't about to argue with anything that made them sound more intimidating right now. "We call it the will to live," she said firmly. "And right now my will is telling me that we're getting on our ship and leaving." "I think not," Zelt replied, raising a limb. His soldiers raised their weapons in unison. "You see, we've already begun integrating your regenerative capabilities into our bioweapons. The prototypes are imperfect, but with more samples." "Samples?" Thompson interrupted, indignant. "We're people, not science experiments." Zelt's head swiveled toward Thompson with mechanical precision. "Your species' distinction between the two is another fascinating quirk we hope to study." What happened next would later be described in the official mission report as a strategic application of human biological advantages, but was actually just Captain Riley losing her patience entirely. As Zelt monologued about the military applications of spite healing, Riley took 3 long strides forward and did something no one in the galactic community had apparently considered. She physically attacked the commander. The pipe connected with Zelt's exoskeleton with a satisfying crack. The commander staggered, clearly not expecting direct physical confrontation, apparently a rarity in advanced species conflicts. "Shoot her," Zelt ordered, but the momentary confusion gave Riley's team the opening they needed. Dr. Patel and the Lurai resistance fighters deployed some kind of electromagnetic pulse device they'd cobbled together during their escape, temporarily disabling the collective's energy weapons. Thompson, showing unexpected competence, had already started the ship's engines remotely. The ensuing battle was brief but vicious. Without their advanced weapons, the collective soldiers were unprepared for humans who had spent their evolutionary history punching, kicking, and generally bludgeoning problems into submission. Riley found herself face to face with Zelt again, bleeding from several cuts but feeling nothing but adrenaline-fueled clarity. "You know what's really special about human spite healing, Commander?" she asked, dodging a swipe from his bladed limb. "It works best when we have something worth fighting for." Zelt's mandibles opened to respond, but Riley didn't give him the chance. She brought the pipe down one final time, striking the exact spot where she'd hit before, where a hairline fracture had already formed in his otherwise impenetrable exoskeleton. The commander crumpled, his systems shorting out in a shower of sparks. "And that," Riley panted, standing over the fallen commander, "is why you don't mess with a species that evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill us. We don't just heal, we adapt, we improve, and we hold grudges." As the remaining collective forces retreated in disarray, Riley helped Dr. Nix aboard their ship. "That was quite a display of your species' fighting spirit," the Vax'arian scientist observed delicately. "Spite," Riley corrected with a grim smile. "Pure human spite." 3 months after what diplomatic channels were now euphemistically calling the regeneration misunderstanding, Captain Morgan Riley stood in the newly established Earth Embassy on the Galactic Council Station, watching with amusement as Lieutenant Thompson demonstrated the concept of high fives to a group of fascinated alien dignitaries. "The flesh-to-flesh contact doesn't damage your epidermis?" a Vax'arian youth inquired, eye stalks quivering with morbid curiosity. "Nah," Thompson replied cheerfully. "And even if it did, we'd just grow it back. Probably better than before." From across the room, Ambassador Krill shot Riley a look that somehow communicated exasperation despite the completely alien facial structure. The Vax'arian diplomatic corps had eventually come around to the idea that humans weren't intentionally being provocative with their healing processes, they were just built differently. Dr. Patel sidled up beside Riley, holding what appeared to be a glass of something fluorescent. "The cultural exchange program is going surprisingly well," she observed. "Though I had to shut down the Watch Human Wounds Heal in Real-Time exhibit that engineering tried to set up." "Probably for the best," Riley agreed. "How's Dr. Nix adjusting to life as our alien ambassador?" They both glanced over to where the Vax'arian scientist was earnestly explaining human medical practices to a horrified delegation from a gas giant in the Orion Arm. "And they don't consider it barbaric at all," they overheard Nix explaining. "They actually encourage the process with substances called vitamins and protein shakes." The delegation's translator emitted what could only be described as a collective gasp. "I think," Dr. Patel said carefully, "that Nix is enjoying the role of cultural interpreter a little too much." In the months since their escape from the Quantum Collective, much had changed in human-alien relations. The revelation of the collective's illegal weapons program had caused significant political upheaval, resulting in new treaties and safeguards. Earth had been fast-tracked for Galactic Council membership, partly out of genuine diplomatic interest and partly, Riley suspected, because everyone wanted to keep a close eye on the weird species that grew new body parts for fun. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. High Commander Zelt, now stripped of rank and under the supervision of Lurai security, was being escorted into the embassy as part of the ongoing peace negotiations. The commander's exoskeleton had been repaired, though the crack Riley had created was still visible, deliberately left as a mark of disgrace in collective culture. He caught Riley's eye across the room, mandibles clicking once in what might have been reluctant respect. Captain Riley, he acknowledged as he was led past. I see your infamous spite healing has served you well. Those scars are new. Riley unconsciously touched the thin line across her cheek, a souvenir from their final confrontation. Actually, I could have had it completely removed. I chose to keep it. Zelt's compound eyes narrowed in confusion. Why would you deliberately preserve evidence of damage? Because some scars are worth keeping, Riley replied. They tell our stories. The concept was clearly incomprehensible to the commander, who was led away still puzzling over it. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Riley found herself on an observation deck overlooking the vast spiral arm of the galaxy. Dr. Nix joined her, eye stalks swiveling to take in the view. You know, the Vax'arian scientist remarked, before I met humans, our xenobiologists had a theory about advanced civilizations. We believed that as species evolved, they would inevitably move toward greater efficiency, minimizing biological processes, reducing waste, eliminating redundancy. Sounds logical, Riley agreed. But humans? Nix continued, gesturing with all four limbs. Humans are gloriously, chaotically inefficient. You maintain systems that could be simplified. You grow more cells than you need. You heal with spectacular redundancy. And somehow, because of that, not despite it, you've survived on a planet that should have killed you 1,000 times over. Riley smiled. We're stubborn that way. The Galactic Council is still debating how to classify humans, Nix admitted. Some want to categorize you as biological anomalies. Others suggest regenerative sentience. The Lorai have proposed the spiteful ones, which I believe was meant as a compliment. And what do you think we should be called? Riley asked. Nix's color shifted to a warm, thoughtful purple. I've submitted my own classification, evolutionary optimists. Because despite everything, despite the inefficiency, despite the danger, your bodies behave as if they believe things will get better. As if damage is just a temporary setback. As if pain is worth enduring for the promise of tomorrow. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the stars. Though, Nix added with what the translator rendered as deadpan humor, the rest of the galaxy still finds your scabs revolting. Captain Riley laughed loud enough to make several nearby diplomats' eye stalks swivel in alarm. Fair enough. We promised to sweep up after ourselves. As the embassy lights dimmed to simulate Earth evening, a message flashed across the diplomatic news feed. Human delegation approved for full council membership. Special accommodations to be made for their unique biological processes. Riley couldn't help but smile. The galaxy wasn't ready for humans, for their messy healing, their inefficient bodies, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. But they were going to have to get used to it. Because if there was one thing humans were better at than healing through spite, it was spreading through sheer, unstoppable optimism. And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing about them after all.